I seriously don't want to leave this topic undiscussed for even one more day. Some are going to inevitably eye roll at the idea of the title or topic at hand, but just hear me out for a moment. This isn't an I'm a real fan because of this, that, or the other thing video. If you're here, you probably are a fan of the Borderlands franchise, and more than likely, you have some sort of worry about Gearbox's upcoming Borderlands 4, which is slated for the release date of September 23rd, 2025. And if you have zero worries about the game, then you're probably wondering why. Well, it's like I said, you're a Borderlands fan, but you just probably don't care about something that isn't out yet. Well, for those of us who do play these games more than any other out there, like myself, Borderlands 4 concerns the fans who still care. Out of time, so say goodbye. Now today I'm going to be discussing a topic that cannot be held off for any longer, because the future of this franchise isn't discussed enough in my honest opinion. While the past is looked back upon, whether it be the piss poor sequels or the original classics that we keep returning to, we're often glossing over the importance of the future of Borderlands as an IP. While we already know Borderlands 4 is on the way, as someone who grew up with the series, I now start to wonder how it's going to look when I'm an old grump in the future complaining about the newspaper. As in the last decade, a lot of us have noticed the overall quality decline of each Borderlands project, which makes me think about the future for me with this series, as one day when I have children of my own and they ask, "Dad, what's Borderlands?" I hope my explanation doesn't start with, "Well, it was good," or "I wish you could have played it back then," because that's one of the things that I fear the most for this franchise, that in 10 years from now, Borderlands is just nothing but a distant memory, a dead IP. I've seen so many of my personal favorite games die off, companies shut down or just stop making games because of the failed sequels, whether it be Crackdown, an open world third-person shooter that some of you might not have even heard of. That's how long it's been in the dirt for. Left 4 Dead is another one of my favorites, and yeah, Back 4 Blood. I was a very casual fan of Gears of War and Halo, and both are as good as finished. Call of Duty also had a hell of a run when I was growing up, and today they are on a run of flops, AI controversies, and lower player counts than ever before. And why do I bring up all of these franchises that have little to do with Borderlands? Well, it's actually much simpler than it may seem. What all of these IPs have in common with Gearbox's Borderlands is they all peaked during the 2010s. And the following year's sequels not only push fans away, but as they move further from what initially made these games great, they move more towards a business model to maximize profits instead of the traditional entertainment and replayability aspects that were truly important to developers back in those times. You also can't really fault them for this, as games are far more expensive in the year of 2025 than they were back in, say, 2009 or 2012. But rushed out projects lead to day one patches, and then these broken games being put out inevitably pushes gamers away, as spending $70 on something that isn't even close to complete feels criminal. On top of season passes, battle passes, paid DLC, games has become an investment for not just the companies, but the consumer as well. Which is one of the exact reasons why I'm here today, because the fans that are still around, that still hold on to hope that 4 will be a return to form, we've grown to become concerned for the game and our series as a whole. Not because we hate it or want it to fail, but because every single person who has left a worry on any public forum across the internet, a majority of them did so because they still care. And I mentioned this today because Gearbox needs to hear this, but so does some of the fans, because there are people who question my motives and think that I'm just being negative for the sake of being negative. And while I and everyone could admit that they jump the gun and say some things that they probably shouldn't at times, I'm not just going to bite my tongue for a company that has enough people doing it around them. The honest criticism is really what they need, not sugar-coated shit. As pointed out by some in the comments in my last video, negativity is different from criticism, and sure, you're right, but you're still missing the point that was made. Criticism can't really be positive. Can it be constructive? Hell yeah, it can. But a criticism is a disapproval of something or someone else's actions. And a disagreement is usually seen as a negative action to most people on the internet. Well, if you happen to have any friends in the real world, and I would assume that most of you do, and you genuinely care for those friendships, you probably find yourself disagreeing with opinions that they have, and maybe even occasionally getting into a friendly debate about said disagreements. Does this make you any less of a friend to these people? No. It means that you still care enough and feel close enough to share how you really felt. Now, I know some of you are wondering, where the hell are you going with this? Get to the point, and it's this right here. If we didn't still care about Borderlands and we were just, as a lot of the Gearbox defenders like to say, quote unquote, hating to hate, we wouldn't still be here talking about it, because these games are not even close to mainstream popularity. It's a niche franchise with a niche audience. Anybody that's making Borderlands videos isn't doing so because they want to be famous on YouTube. They're doing it because they actually love these fucking games. And as Gearbox has tried to expand on that audience, they've been trying to push away everyone that they built the games for originally. Instead of being honest and giving discourse to the community, they've blocked and silenced anyone who doesn't agree. Still, what's my point? Just gonna say it here right now. These gaming companies are not your friend, and backing them up as if they are is only wasting time, energy, and love that you could be putting elsewhere. Because unfortunately, all they care about is that money in your bank account being sent over to theirs. And the sooner that you realize that, the better. Now, speaking to the majority of people who do have common sense and understand what I'm talking about, let them know why you're worried about this game down in the comments below, as the creative director for Borderlands 4 did comment on one of my last videos, letting me know that he does watch videos in the community, good, bad, or ugly. And man, I'm sorry to say, but being paid to watch my videos is just crazy, but must be one hell of a job. But in all seriousness, this does at least let us know that at least they are watching everything, including videos about their own CEO blocking and muting friends of his that are worried about this game. As concerned as I am, the fact that Gearbox is taking the time out of their day to listen to fans like yourself and fans like me, it makes me feel a little bit better, but until I see the game for myself, I'm not going to judge it properly, as it wouldn't be fair to do so. Even though the past and however many projects with the Borderlands name attached to it have been absolutely awful, just one after another, after another, after another, we're still here waiting and hoping that the next one is better than the last. And hell, really it comes down to Borderlands being the only looter shooter franchise like it, and I just hope it's a series that I can share with my family one day. And my girlfriend already doesn't really understand it, and I don't blame her. The series is anything but normal, and for it to be where it is, it just makes a lot of us, concerned. And hopefully when we see some gameplay in action at the Sony State of Play coming up in the spring, it'll show us some more that simmers down a lot of these worries, but I'm not going to hold my breath until we see it. But the moral of today's video is just know that we wouldn't be worried if we didn't still care.